this is celebration of Women's Month, celebrating all the women of the past, both in our country and around the world that have done great things, and it's celebrating their lives. And we're going to pick out one from the Bible that really, I just love this person. Go to my next slide. Ruth, and the story of Ruth. And why was Ruth so special? Well, number one, did you know Ruth was David's great-grandma? Okay? So, Ruth is a very special. And from her beginnings of where she came from and all, you wouldn't have put her in the line of the kings, but she's there. Okay? So Ruth is a very special person, not because of great things she done, but because of her heart. It's all about her heart. So first of all, Ruth was a Moabitist. She was from Moabite. And the people of Moabite. Now the people of Moabite were the ones that God told Israel when they came in the land, make sure you get all them people out of your country. Well, they didn't do a great job of it, okay? So Ruth, now it came to pass in the days of the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land. When God had to correct his people, the way he would do it is with a famine. Means no rain, everything dies, everybody becomes hungry. Now this particular famine, placing it in time and in the timeline of David, we can do that because of his grandmother. We don't know what was the cause of this famine, but something was going on. And normally what happened is when they started turning back to other gods, and God had to bring them back to his people. You know what's the funny thing about us humans? We don't ever ask for help until we're in such dire need, and we're drive us down to our knees. Then we turn and look to God and say, help me. Okay? If we would just start out that, we talked about that in Sunday school this morning, if we would start out asking for God's help from the very beginning, maybe things wouldn't be so bad. But no, we wait till we get driven down to our knees. There was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, that's the tribe, went to dwell in the country of Moab. And he and his wife and his 2 sons. So they went out as a family, a husband, a wife, and 2 young sons. And they're going there because there's no food in the land and there's a drought. So we know there's food and water and everything over in that country. Let's go over there and spend some time over there. And the name of this man was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi. And the names of their 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephraimites from Bethlehem, Judah. And they went in the country of Moab and remained there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. So while they're there, she became a widow. But in the land of Israel, and as an Israeli, as long as you have children, even though you're a widow, you still have status. Because back in those days, your status was your kids as a female. It's the fact you raised sons and daughters, and you can always look at what they did. What do we call that nowadays? We call that living vicariously through our children, okay? And the things our children do. Elimelech, her husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. And they took wives, so they grew up, were there long enough for them to grow up enough to take wives of the women of Moab. Now, they're not supposed to do that. Israelis are supposed to marry Israelis. But, hey, that's where they are. They fell in love. They got married. And the name of one was Ophrah, and the name of the other one was Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. So they were in that foreign country for 10 years. And both Mahlon and Chilion also died. Now, that is a stab in the heart. Folks, parents should not outlive their children, right? Everybody agree on that? You shouldn't have to outlive your children. There's nothing harder on a parent than to watch your child die. If mom and dad dies, that's just the natural way of things. But when your child dies, that is hard on parents. So the woman survived her 2 sons and her husband, and she arose with her daughters-in-law, and that she might return to the country of from the country of Moab, for she had heard that the country she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them bread. So now the famine's over. Now there's water. There's things growing. The land it can support again. She wants to go home. Therefore she went out from the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each to your mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me." Why? Because they respected their lost husbands. And they had mourned their proper time. And so now it's time for them to go and find a new husband. Because what was the way that women were known back then? By their children. Well, Naomi's telling them, look, you can't stay with me, because if you stay with me, what are you going to do? Wait till I have more children and they grow up and you're going to marry them? Because that would be the normal way of things. We've seen that several times in the Bible. But she said, you're foreigners. I'm going back to my own land. You need to go back to your mom and dad's house and find you a new husband. And you're free to do that. And that's the best thing for you, instead of going to a foreign land. Therefore she went out to the place where she was, who and her 2 daughter-in-laws with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-laws, go return each to her mother's house, because when you live in your mother's house, that's when the things are done to help you get a new husband. You know, anybody say, what was that? When Fiddler on the Roof, the matchmaker, thing. All right, that's kind of what happened back then. And the Lord grant you may find rest each in the house of your husband. She's encouraging them to go back and find a new husband so that they can have children. Naomi returns with Ruth. So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and they wept. That's natural. They're departing. They've been together for 10 years. They've watched these girls from being married to their sons grow up. And now they're having to part. And she's going back to her own land, and she's leaving them behind. And they said to her, surely we will return with you to your people. But Naomi said, turn back, my daughters. Why would you go with me? Because remember, her status was her children and they're dead. She has no status. Are there still sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. For I am too old to have a husband. For if I should say I have hope, if I should say that if I should have a husband tonight and should also bear sons, would you wait for them until they were grown up? Would you restrain yourselves from having husbands? No, my daughters, for it grieves me very much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. She said, I'm sorry you lost your husband. I'm sorry that my sons died, but there's nothing I can do about it. Go back to your mom and daddy and go spend time in your own towns and find you another husband. And they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Oprah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And she said, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods, and return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, entreat me not to leave you, or to turn back from following you. Go to the picture. Okay. Her family is Chemosh, is who they worship. That is the god of the Moabites. He is a god of war and peace. They pray to him. If they get into a fight with somebody, they would pray to this God to help them win the war, or they would pray to him to keep the peace. But that's their God. That's the one she grew up with. Okay? Wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and here's the important thing. and your God will be my God. Your God, my God. She is forsaking the non-God of the people of Moabite, and she is accepting the God of Israel as her God. Once you accept the God of Israel and determine that you're going to be under the God of Israel, then the cloak of the God of heaven is on you. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death part you from me. I'm going to take care of you in your dotage until you die. Well, we don't do that anymore. When people get a little bit older than I am now, what do the kids do? They put us in a nursing home, right? So, we understand. But back then, if you had kids, the kids took care of grandma and grandpa until mom and dad passed away. They stayed in their house. And that's what she is declaring, that you are my mother-in-law, I love you, and I'm going to take care of you until I die, regardless of what it takes and what I have to do. There is a loving heart. Those two people are soulmates, and they are attached together. When she saw that she was determined to go with her, she stopped speaking to her. She stopped trying to convince her. Now the two of them went until they came to Bethlehem, and it happened that when they came to Bethlehem, that all the city was excited because of them. And the women said, "This is Naomi." They remembered her, been 10 years, but they grew up with her. They remembered her. But what does she say? But she said, "Do not call me Naomi, but call me Myra. For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I've lost my husband and I've lost my children. I have no status left. I have no right to declare what great things my family will do. My family has come to an end. I went out full, and the Lord has brought me home again empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has afflicted me?" So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. Okay? Now, when they came back, because the name follows the children, not the woman of that time, so the only way she can recapture her property, although they let her live there, but ownership during that time did not go to the woman. It went to the male children. She has no male children right now. So she is in what you would call limbo. Yeah, she's got a place to live and everything else, but she don't own it. It's not hers. It belongs to the community right now. Ruth 2, 1 through 19. And there was a relative of Naomi's husband, a great man of wealth of the family of Elimelech. So same family now. We're talking about family tree. So of her same family, she has a rich, probably second, third cousin or something. His name was Boaz. So Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Please let me go to the field and glean heads of grain after him, in whose sight I might find favor." And she said to her, "Go." Now let me explain this and how this works. So the reapers are reaping the wheat or the barley. It falls to the ground, and they go in there and they gather them up. And I've watched this happen, because there's people that still do the ancient ways. And they'll grab one strand of that barley stalk, and they'll pull a bundle together, and they'll wrap it around a couple times, and they'll tie it off. And they drop that, and then they go get the next one and the next one. So all these little bunches are laying there. But some of the heads of the barley will break off and fall on the ground. They don't pick those up. The Lord commanded them, don't pick those up. That's for the poor. That's for the left out. That's for the ones that can't afford anything. You leave that on the ground and you let them come and pick that up so they'll have something to eat. So that's what Ruth is. She's playing the part of a beggar, and she's going to the field and she's going, can I pick up the whatever falls on the ground? Then she left and went to glean after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field that belonged to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. Now behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reaper, the Lord be with you. These are his people who are hired to do all the reaping. You see, back then, that might be a field of 100 acres. He can't do that. He's got to hire people, and he pays them to reap his field. And they come from all over to the different fields and say, you know, how much. There's other places in the Bible we can read about reapers and how much they're paid. We know how much they make for a day's wages and all that type of stuff. Jesus even spoke of that. So they come there to be hired to do that. Well, there's always an overseer. This guy has been doing it for so long, he knows how to reap a field, the most cheapest and the most effective way to reap a field. So he's put in charge, and that's who he's speaking to right now. We used to call that guy the straw boss. You ever heard of straw boss? Now you know where it came from. Now behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And he answered him, the Lord bless you. Go to that picture. This is the meeting. I think it was a Lord ordained meeting where this young woman meets Boaz. Then Boaz said to his servants, who was in charge of the reaper? Whose young woman is this? He sees the young woman out there picking up the grains and stuff and putting it in a basket. And he says, where did this woman come? She's not part of my reapers. She's not part of your daughters, the young women that normally do the work here. Who is this? So the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, this is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. And she said, please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. She came and continued from the morning to now. What does that show? She's dedicated. She's a hard worker. Though she rested a little bit in the house, probably in the noon of the day, they'll take a break and go in the house and drink a little water and eat a little bit of bread and stuff, and they let her come in and spend time with them. Then Boaz said to Ruth, you will listen, my daughter, will you not? Will you not listen to what I'm about to tell you? Do not go and glean after another field, nor go from here, but stay close by my young women, and let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. Have I not commanded the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink from what the young men have drawn. So she fell on her face. Okay? Now, why is this so out of place? She's Moabitess. Okay? Israelis aren't even supposed to speak to foreigners, much less let them drink out of their dishes or go into their house or anything else, because she's a foreigner. So this is a very unusual thing. And he's not just an average everyday. This is a great man in his whole community. He's a rich man. He owns many fields and barns and everything else. And he's speaking to this foreigner, young girl, a young woman. So she fell on her face and bowed down the ground and said to them, why have I found favor in your eyes that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? She understands they're not supposed to be doing this. She wasn't supposed to marry Naomi's sons, but they did anyway. And so she's stunned that he has taken time to speak to her. Now Boaz answered to her, it has been fully reported to me all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. And now you have left your father and your mother and the land of your birth and have come to the people whom you did not know before. It's because of what you did. You know, actions speak louder than words. This woman left her own country. She clung to her mother-in-law who had no children and no way of supporting herself and was probably way too old to go out in the field and glean glean food for herself. And she's taken on the role of taking care of her mother-in-law. Boaz noticed that. Notice how dedicated she was, how much she loved her mother-in-law, and Boaz is impressed by this. The Lord repay your work, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord God of Israel, under whom wings you have come for refuge. He understands that she has now devoted herself to her mother-in-law and the gods of this country. The God, not their gods, but she's given up on them, and now she's willing to worship the Lord God Almighty and to serve underneath Him. You know, service, what shows a Christian that you're a Christian? It's not what you say, it's your service for God. You're supposed to be serving God. If you're still drawing a breath here on earth, in some way you need to be serving God. She has given up her family. She has given up her homeland. She's given up her gods. And she's turned her life over to the God of Israel. And all she has to the God of Israel. Boaz has recognized this and understand what she has given up for them. Because she could have gone back to her mother's house and probably within 6 months she'd have been married again to another Moabite person and just gone on with her life. But no, she's dedicated her life to taking care of her mother-in-law who lost her children. She said, "Let me find favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me and have spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not like one of your maidservants," because I'm a foreigner. She understands her status. Now Boaz said to her at mealtime, "Come here and eat of the bread and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar." How many people have been to Olive Garden? Okay, y'all eat at Olive Garden or one of those places, and they'll bring out a little bowl of bread and they'll put some, what is that stuff they put in, the green stuff, Peggy? Spices and stuff. They'll put it in there, and then they'll pour the oil in it. They mix it up, and you dip your bread in it. Okay? This is what they're talking about. This goes way, way back. This isn't something new. This goes all the way back to the beginning. So they used to dip their bread in the vinegar and oil and eat it to give them strength, because they're fixing to go back out. This is midday. They still got a whole afternoon of hot sun to go out there and glean in the field and to reap that field. So they're in there getting some water and getting some bread in them so they can go back out to the field. And he has invited her to come into his house, a foreigner to come into his house. That is so out of place in their religion and in their way of life, to invite this foreigner to come in. And she sat beside the reapers, and he passed her parched grain for her, so they would cook some of the grain and eat it. And she ate and was satisfied, and kept some back. You know what she's thinking about? Here, let me put some of this in my pocket here, so my mother-in-law will have something to eat this afternoon. Okay? Still, here in the midday, in the break, she's still thinking about her mother-in-law. And when she rose up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, "Let her glean even among the sheaves." So what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to be gleaning up here, bundling the sheaves and put them back, and then the gleaners can come back here and pick up what's left over after they've been picked up. He says, no. Let her go in amongst the sheaves there and pick up the heads there. That's showing favoritism. In this case, that's a good thing. And she ate and was satisfied and kept some back, and she rose up to glean, and Boaz commanded his young men, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her, and let the grain from the bundles fall purposely for her." You know what? He knows Naomi is his kinsman and he knows her personally, and he loves her too, and he knows that what she picks up is going to take care of his cousin. So he's saying, as you're putting it in the bag, let some of it fall on the ground for her to pick up. Help her out some. So she gleaned in the field until evening and beat out the gleaning, and it was about an ephah of barley. Go back to that picture just before there. An ephah of barley. Ladies, that is 4.5 gallons, or about 38 pounds, is what she gleaned in a day's time. You can make a pretty good meal out of that much, can't you? And she beat it out and got it down and put it in a sack, and she's taking it back to her mother-in-law. And they'll be able to eat for probably days off of what she gleaned. So she brought out and gave to, let me go back, and when she took it up and went to the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, so she brought it out and gave to her what she had kept back, so that while she's at lunch, she put some in her pocket, she went ahead and gave her something that's already cooked she can eat right now. That's love, folks. Some people say love is a bouquet of flowers or some candy or something like that. No, love is what you do. I had a person come up to me and says, Pastor, I don't think I love my mother. What do you mean? Well, I'm mad at her all the time, and I'm so tired, and I have to take care of her. I have to change her diapers. I have to do this for her and take her to a doctor's appointment. I'm always irritable and everything else. I don't think I love my mother. I look at her and says, I think you love her a lot. It ain't telling your mama you love her. It's what you do for her. Yes, it may be hard. It may be aggravating to you or something like that, or what you're going through. But that's okay. You know what? You're doing it. Nobody else is going to do it. Nobody else cares enough about your mama to do that. Yes, you love your mother. Your attitude may not always be the greatest, but you're doing what you do speaks louder than anything you can say. And I told her, yes, you do love your mother. Okay? Kind of need to work on the attitude a little bit, but you love your mother because of what you're doing. She is showing she loves her mother-in-law by what she is doing. And gave it to her what she had kept back after she had been satisfied. And her mother-in-law said, where have you gleaned today? And where did you work? Blessed be the one who took notice of you. And she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, this man with whom I worked today was Boaz. I imagine the lights came on in Naomi's eyes when she heard those words, because she knows who Boaz is. She knows he's a near kin to her. She knows he's a powerful man. And she knows now that Boaz cares about her. She knows that Boaz respects her, because Boaz look how much. 4.5 gallons, lady, that's a lot of, just say flour. That's a lot of flour, isn't it? You could eat a long time off of that much. And Boaz had purposely let the grain fall on the ground so that Ruth could pick it up, knowing that it's going back to this person that's in his family, that's on hard times. He knows that she's lost her husband and her 2 children, knows she's hurting really bad, knows what her status is, and he cared. So now you got 2 people that care about you. You got this daughter-in-law who's not even from your country, who cares enough to leave her family and come here, and you got a near cousin who made sure that you got food to eat on and you're not going to go hungry. Yes, God, things have been bad for her. But you know what? Things are looking up just a little bit. God may allow things to happen in our lives to tear us down, but he doesn't forsake us. And he hasn't forsaken Naomi. Father, thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful story that you've told here. whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, I want to thank you for joining us here at Frontenac Baptist Church here in Cocoa, Florida. I hope you're getting a blessing from this sermon series. Once again, thank you for joining us here at Frontenac Baptist Church in Cocoa, Florida.